Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Joining me now is Chairman and CEO of Stagwell Inc., also Chairman of Harris Poll, Mark Penn. Mark, thank you so much for joining me.
Happy to be here.
The state of the 2024 presidential race really shook up last week when President Joe Biden stepped down from the race, endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris a few seconds later, and now here we are a week later. You have a new poll, Harvard Cap's Harris poll, on the state of the race. What are some of your takeaways?
Well, the more things change, the more they seem to stay the same, is kind of the critical takeaway, which is that going into the debate, Trump had a several point advantage over Biden. And after the debate, Biden was pretty much falling off a cliff, particularly with the fact that Democrats had split and many of them were asking for him to resign. Now that he did resign from running again and Kamala Harris is the nominee, the race has come back to where it was with some changes. If you look, President Trump has a 48% favorable, highest favorable he's had because of some of the, I think, the character that he showed under literally fire. And Kamala Harris's image is totally different from what it was. She used to have a 38-52 unfavorable, and now all of a sudden it's 47-47 favorable out of the blue. A dramatic change in a week now that she's the nominee, and Democrats are cheering that they have a new nominee who could possibly take down Donald Trump.
I know she's seeing this coronation. She's seeing what many describe as this honeymoon phase. President Biden, according to this poll, still doesn't have the best approval rating. Because she's his number two, is that going to stick to her?
Well, that's the real question. There's only 100 days here. She didn't really have the testing of a primary. And it seems like in the modern world, candidates can duck virtually anything for 100 days. So is in fact she going to be stuck with what people think about the Biden record? Is her kind of burst of enthusiasm going to kind of win out and kind of slide through? She's got the Democratic convention coming up, while the Republicans have already had their convention, so they won't get another shot. She's got a VP nominee. She's got a lot of things to kind of keep momentum going here. In our poll, Trump is winning by 3 to 4 points, depending upon who's in and who's out. But that means it's a relatively close race.
Can you break down the poll here by demographic? What is sticking out to you?
Well, what sticks out to me is there's an emerging gender gap in which men are more backing the Trump-Vance ticket and women are lining up much more on Harris. So I do think we're going to see a resurgence of that kind of gap. And most people don't realize that women have an advantage in voting. They live longer, so there are more women, and then they actually tend to have a higher likelihood of voting. And so they actually have about a 5 or 6 million person advantage. So that gender gap that's emerging is something that the Trump campaign really has to address, or maybe what is their downfall.
And now Vice Presidential nominee J.D. Vance really did the Trump campaign no favors with the resurgence of his childless cat lady's comments. I mean, I know women on both sides of the aisle taking great offense to those comments. How detrimental is that for his campaign, A? And B, should Trump drop J.D. Vance?
Well, kudos to Democratic Oppo researchers who were able to pull this comment out from 3 years ago and blow it up into something, on social media and elsewhere that dominates the Vance image. I think it's, this is a kind of it's a tricky thing. I think that it ties into, I think, the disadvantage with women that the Trump effort is showing, and I think that Vance has some explaining to do. He's trying to explain it. He didn't have, as a result, I think the best launch. I never thought he was the best nominee, and certainly not the best nominee in a Harris race. I would certainly have suggested he would have done better with Rubio. I don't know whether Trump could actually either want to or pull off a switch. It's not in Trump's kind of makeup to go backwards, even when he makes a choice that is not completely optimal.
JD Vance's first 2 weeks as the vice presidential nominee do seem like a series of unforced errors here, with those comments resurging. He hasn't had the most favorable social media embrace. But aside from that and women, where else is the Trump campaign the weakest?
Well, I mean, obviously the black vote, I think, is coming back around Kamala Harris, but the Trump campaign has a lot of strengths. They are winning. They're doing well with independents. They're doing well with the Latino vote. I think here that neither side has adequately addressed and has really hurt, particularly the working class Latino vote is hurt dramatically by the impact of inflation and the economy. Most Latinos see their economic fortune as moving backwards, and so I think that you see Kamala Harris doing somewhat better with young people, with black voters. The Trump campaign obviously doing well with rural areas, but also doing well with suburban, also having a real issue advantage in terms of inflation and immigration and crime all being top issues. And remember, ultimately, only 42% think that Biden did a good job as president. So the fact that she's out there campaigning today with Biden proposals on the Supreme Court, those are real problems in terms of how does she win as a continuation of the Biden administration when most people reject continuing the Biden administration.
She's coming in with about 100 days left, so there's very little runway for her. She's also coming in behind President Trump in the polls. What else does Vice President Kamala Harris see as weaknesses in her campaign?
Well, I think her greatest weakness is her greatest strength, which is if she can avoid the issues and project an image of confidence and enthusiasm and run the table out, maybe she'll debate, maybe not, maybe just one debate. If she can do that, she can kind of maybe glide in here. Most people think when we looked at some of the personal attributes that she's got a great temperament compared to Donald Trump. And if she can make Trump seem that that his temperament isn't right for the presidency and hers in the country and hers is right, I think obviously she's got some issues in terms of the weaknesses. Does she favor open borders? Does she favor moving to EVs and getting rid of gas cars? We did a number of questions. Does she favor getting rid of private health insurance? I mean, really 2/3 to 3/4 of the voters oppose all those policies that she's on record as favoring in the past. So if she's really pinned down on those policies, has she changed her views or not? Those are going to be, I think, important issues here to her to resolve one way or the other, or to avoid.
Immigration and inflation have been found in this poll as the top issues facing voters. And these are two issues that President Biden they were his biggest weaknesses in his reelection campaign. Are these weaknesses for her, and how does she explain these away?
Well, definitely the immigration issue, which is where there's this whole debate now: was she in charge of immigration or not? When clearly she was at least given the issue to handle, and she obviously didn't handle it in any meaningful way. Will the voters come around to that, or will they skip over it? Or they just, the original idea of the Biden campaign was frankly just to paint Trump as unacceptable and anti-democratic. And that failed because it turned out that Biden really couldn't handle the job of the presidency. So is she just going to make the campaign into that and try to avoid kind of all of these kind of difficult issues and that trouble her and would trouble the electorate? And part of that is also how effective the Trump campaign is going to be. You can see here the Democratic campaign has been very effective in dragging up a comment from J.D. Vance from 3 years ago and getting it out there. But so far the Trump campaign has not had the same effectiveness on social media against Harris, and she is rising in favorability.
Let's talk about that a little bit more, because her now as the likely nominee seems to have caught the Trump campaign flat-footed a little bit. I mean, all the talk about unity after the assassination attempt seemingly went out the window. So how do they pivot their strategy now that it's a Harris-Trump race instead of a Biden-Trump race?
Well, they've got to focus first on the core issues that they have advantages on: inflation or the economy, immigration, crime, and international affairs, where the world is aflame and President Trump has a record of no wars while he was president. And so they have to get to those basics. And then second, they need to flesh out, what does Harris really stand for? And is she farther to the left than Joe Biden? And third, they have to tag Harris with the Biden administration, which is generally unpopular for the last several years, with job ratings of around 40%.
The Harvard Capps Harris poll did find that 2 in 5 independents are still making up their mind. What does this mean to you?
This means to me that this race could be won by either candidate. You're within a couple of points. Both candidates now have very similar images. Will the issues really dominate where there's 20 or 30 point differences? Will women say, I can't have another Trump administration? Will Trump be able to moderate that? Will Hispanic voters come back to the Democratic Party? Or will they vote their pocketbook, or what they perceive as their pocketbook? Will independent voters here kind of, assess the two again and really give this whole race a fresh start? They pretty much had decided in Trump's favor over Biden, but now they have to really take a look at the new at Kamala Harris here and what she would do as president. So there's so many open questions here, and I think that question, which shows, so many independents are saying they're open-minded, suggests here that it's not election day, that anything could happen, and that's why there's a surge of people contributing money, of people getting enthusiastic. This is going to be a highly energized electorate here come November.
There are a lot of unanswered, open-ended questions here, as you said, but I want to ask you one that you did mention, and that has to do with Hispanic voters. Do you see them in the next 3 months coming back more to the left now that Harris is on top of the ticket?
I think this is a real problem for the Harris campaign, which is that I believe they will reconsolidate black voters, but from what I see in the polls, given who she's likely to pick as a vice presidential choice, I don't see any clear ability that they've got to bring home Latino voters in the same way. And a lot of those are unhappy about the economy, are much more supportive of Trump than they've ever been. And so I think the election could well be decided by those Latino voters that Trump is doing historically better with.
Let's talk about that vice presidential pick here. Just how important is it this time around, given the historic nature of this race, and who do voters want to see as her running mate?
We always think during this period that the vice presidential choice is the most important choice. And because we've got nothing else to do but speculate on who's going to be the VP. And in the end, unless it's disastrous, it really doesn't tend to make much difference, or it might underscore some themes. I think Trump intended to, cement his capture of the Midwest with J.D. Vance, and how that's spinning out, I think, has been the success of the Democratic oppo. I think when we asked the voters who they wanted to see for Harris's VP choice, they didn't really have a pick. Josh Shapiro and Mark Kelly were at the top, but that's because I think they're the ones most mentioned in the media, and even they had well under 20% in terms of interest, and 41% of the voters said they don't know. So I think it's going to be up to Harris here to kind of shape the choice, and then up to Democrats and Republicans to go after whoever the choice is and support them. but I don't think at the end of the day it's more or less important than the normal.
We've long been saying that this race is going to be coming down to the battleground states. And the top two names you mentioned, Senator Mark Kelly, he would give a win through the Sun Belt or attempt to. And then Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro would be more that traditional blue wall. What strategy for her do you think is better?
I personally think the blue wall strategy is the more effective one. I don't think Kelly, right now, if you're Harris, you're a California progressive, you don't really have any connection into the blue wall Midwest. Personally, even if things look good overall in the polls, that doesn't mean that you're going to connect to those working class voters. I'm not sure Kelly's going to do it, more so, than someone like Fetterman, who's not really a possible VP choice, but who really connects with those kinds of voters. So I think it would be better to pursue that strategy, because I think that's where the race is ultimately decided. And I don't think Kelly would have as many advantages.
The dust does seem to finally be settling on this election shakeup a week after it was announced. But how does this data dovetail with your political experience?
Well, I thought the Democrats always picked the vice president. Hubert Humphrey, Walter Mondale, Al Gore, Joe Biden himself, and now Harris. So I think if there had been a primary, probably she would have run institutionally. That's the way things go in the Democratic Party. I was surprised always that President Biden's team agreed to a debate before the nomination, because it was the only thing that could possibly destabilize this nomination, and it did. And I was kind of shocked that they did that. And I don't know, when all the books are written, who proposed that and why they did that. But that was undoubtedly the biggest surprise of this election, was scheduling a debate so early and taking such a risk. And that risk obviously backfired on Joe Biden.
So as we look at all these numbers, has everything we've known about this race so far fundamentally changed now that Harris is the likely nominee, or has it just reset to maybe June 26th and that pre-debate time?
I think that it's closer to a reset, because, again, we're back to Trump by a couple of points. But there are certain advantages here. Look, age is now off the table as it relates to the Democratic nominee. What about experience? Is experience on the table? Does she have the experience and understanding in foreign affairs to be president? And is she going to face, those kinds of questions? The black vote that seemed to be slipping away, I think that's going to be consolidated. The women's vote that seemed to be, not as polarized against men, seems to be much more polarized. So it is the same race on the surface, but there are key differences here. And of course, right now, her popularity is much higher than Joe Biden's ever was, because he had been slipping in job ratings, slipping in popularity, and slipping in on basically all the dimensions of his job.
And do you think that popularity is, she'll be able to continue that as we get to the convention and as we get to a vice presidential pick? Will she be able to continue that till November?
Look, I think that's kind of the what we used to call the $64,000 question, which is, can she continue to surf up, or is she going to hit a ceiling here, having brought back together what was the core Biden vote, that kind of runs out with a lot of people who are unhappy with their economy, unhappy with the Biden administration. And what had happened was that they had fallen well below that ceiling, because so many people thought Biden did such a bad job in the debate. So many Democrats had already defected. The easy votes have come back. Does it become much harder for her to gain points beyond that? I think it does become much harder for her to gain points, but she does have these several very favorable events here, including her convention, the lack of any serious questioning of her, the good social media, I think, campaign that they've been able to put into effect here that may raise this. But every single point here is going to be a very, very difficult point to get, because the rest of these voters have been, even if they say they might change their mind, have been pretty dug in for quite some time.
Mark Penn, I appreciate the poll. I appreciate your conversation. I'm sure we will have plenty more between now and November. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.